Hey guys, Kangaskid18 here, and I've made a lot of videos about shiny Pokemon, and I've especially highlighted some of my least favorites. I've spoken at length about how Pokemon like Seel, Gengar, Igglybuff, Garchomp, and Leafeon all have terrible shinies, and how it doesn't have to be so, because with just a little tweaking, all of them could be so much better. And while I've consistently used my own personal opinions on what makes a bad shiny, I've come to find that my views don't always match everybody else's. I can't tell you the number of times somebody has commented on one of my videos about their pick for the worst looking shiny Pokemon, and a lot of the time it's something that I hadn't even mentioned. In some cases, I agree with other people's opinions, but I've also noticed that some shinies people think are terrible are ones that I really like. Nevertheless, I've decided, perhaps against my better judgment, to make everybody happy. Now before we get started, I have just a couple quick caveats. As my worst shiny Pokemon series is technically ongoing, I'll only include Pokemon from those generations I've covered in depth. And I've chosen today's entries based on a subjective survey of comments on my videos to determine which terrible shiny Pokemon are mentioned the most often. So without further ado, here are the top 10 worst shiny Pokemon as chosen by all of you and how I'd change them. We're gonna start off today's list with our runners-up, two Pokemon that don't so much have terrible shinies as much as they're a missed opportunity. They're the Gold and Silver Fire Starter Cyndaquil and its final evolution Typhlosion. I had so many potential entries on today's list that I found it hard to rank everything in the right order, and this is an example where I decently like the current shinies. Cyndaquil turns a tan brown, and Typhlosion turns a muted maroon. I don't think there's nearly enough brown shiny Pokemon in the world today, so Cyndaquil ticks a very important box for me, while Typhlosion's red is actually pretty unique as well. But these shinies were very different back in the days of Gold and Silver. Both Cyndaquil and Typhlosion got this deep purple color on their back. But that's not all. Their flames also became a brilliant combination of gold and magenta. But the models you see here don't show the flames, and thus don't do these potential shinies justice. If only there was some way I could show you how they'd look if they used their flames in-game. Oh wait, that's exactly what I did. Doesn't this look awesome? In my opinion, this is one of the biggest missed shiny opportunities in all of Pokemon. Not only should all fire types change the color of their flame when shiny, but these two Pokemon actually did that back in Generation 2. And it's just like Game Freak forgot, but I will never rest until shiny Cyndaquil and shiny Typhlosion get the magenta flames they always deserve. With that out of the way, let's move on to our actual top 10, leading off with our number 10 spot, Heracross. And let me tell you, this one I get. Heracross is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, so it makes sense that it should get an amazing shiny, right? Wrong. Much like every other blue Pokemon in existence, Heracross turns from a beautiful cobalt blue to an absolutely mind-numbing shade of neon magenta. Talk about overkill. So how would I change it if I had my way? How about turning that bright magenta into a relatively more subtle brick red color? And to top it off, we could give it some nice pale blue eyes. Not only does the brick red color better accentuate its fighting type, but it's a color that's fairly underrepresented in today's shinies. This gives Heracross a unique look that is finally deserving of such a cool Pokemon. And next up, we've got today's number 9 spot with Crowbat. Now, Crowbat's shiny coloration is frequently cited as terrible by many people who comment on my videos. And to that I say, really? I guess you could make the argument that the deep chartreuse underwings wasn't the best choice in the world, but I think its light pink coloration looks really cool, and I couldn't imagine this shiny looking any other way. That said, I've decided it's my duty to provide some alternate shinies. So since regular Crowbat has the opposite color of its pre-evolutions Zubat and Golbat, let's make shiny Crowbat into their regular colors. So blue overall with purple underwings, which admittedly does look cool, but I feel like there's something missing. It just looks a little too much like the other Pokemon in its evolution line. So instead, let's keep those purple underwings, but turn the rest of shiny Crowbat into a nice teal color overall. These colors give shiny Crowbat a certain je ne sais quoi. The teal and the purple work great in concert, and although I do like the light pink we had before, I would not be upset if shiny Crowbat looked like this instead. Moving on, we've got our number 8 spot today, it's Scizor. Scizor is one of the most badass Pokemon of all time. Game Freak had quite the challenge ahead of them when they had to design an evolution for an already killer Pokemon like Scizor, and boy did they deliver. Where Scizor looks like a murderous mantis from the Black Lagoon, Scizor looks more like a bright red Corvette, sleek and stylish while still delivering the punch where it counts. But its shiny kinda takes all that and throws it out the window. Gone is the sexy red of a freshly waxed sports car. Instead, we've got a sickly greenish yellow with deep green accents. This thing looks like it needs to be quarantined because it picked up some alien contagion from another world. But there are a couple of ways we can fix this shiny. One option would be to turn it a light cobalt blue, which is more in keeping with the sports car theme. And while I love blue shinies, perhaps this shiny isn't for everyone, but I think there is another option here, notably in a similar fashion to the shiny I gave Cyndaquil and Typhlosion earlier. Much like those Pokemon, Scizor had a very different shiny in the days of Gold and Silver, more of a deep golden color, with bronze highlights. With these fittingly metallic colors, Scizor finally gets a shiny more deserving of its steel typing, and one that fits a previously established shiny we had before. Next up, we've got today's number 7 spot, it's Mewtwo. Now this is another entry that I'm pretty surprised by, but it does get mentioned a lot in my comments section. When Mewtwo turns shiny, all its purple bits turn a bright green color, and honestly, I think the shiny looks pretty decent, but I get the argument here. I don't agree with it, but I get it. Mewtwo is among the most powerful Pokemon of all time, so how come this beast of a Pokemon gets a shiny that's merely decent? And like the previous entry, this is another example where we can take an old shiny coloration it had and repurpose it for its modern shiny. In this case, however, we're not going back to Gold and Silver. Instead, we're heading back to the days of Pokemon Coliseum, the follow-up to the hugely successful Pokemon Stadium series. In these games, shiny Mewtwo is no longer green, rather its purple bits turned a cool golden color instead. While I decently like the green shiny we've got, it's clear that a golden shiny would fit Mewtwo and all its power and majesty so much better. And while I'm just now realizing this makes 2 golden shiny recommendations in a row, I'm not even mad. Golden shinies look awesome. With that, let's move on to today's number 6 spot. It's Umbreon. Now, a lot of times, I'm surprised which Pokemon y'all viewers think have bad shinies, but on this entry, I am flabbergasted. In my opinion, shiny Umbreon has one of the best shinies of all time. And let me just repeat that because I'm not sure that really sank in the first time. This is one of the best shiny Pokemon of all time. Shiny Umbreon gets a lighter gray color overall, with deep saffron eyes and bright cyan rings instead of yellow ones. Usually when I'm looking at a Pokemon for this video, I try to see the argument. Why might somebody dislike a given shiny? But for this entry, I just can't. I don't understand it. What's not to like? And what am I missing? Perhaps somebody can explain it to me in the comments. But above all else, I am tasked with making a new shiny for this Pokemon, so here we go. Let's change shiny Umbreon to be white overall, but with pale yellow rings and pale blue eyes. Alright, I do think this shiny would look kinda cool. Between the white and the pale yellow rings, it does seem kind of angelic, completing the look with a couple of actual halos. Really a stark difference to the dark type it's supposed to be. That said, I don't really think you can have a better shiny than the official one we have today. Which brings us to today's number 5 spot. It's Taros. And while I can't understand why folks dislike the previous entry, I completely understand this one. Bright green shinies are super unpopular, and shiny Taros is among the brightest and greenest of them all. Now, I don't especially hate this shiny. I think it's a bold departure from Taros' regular colors, and I really like the green shade they chose for the mane. But I do think we could do better. How about instead we turn Taros a really pale color overall, with the mane and nose getting a deep imperial red color. I don't think we've got nearly enough deep red shinies out there, and I think this coloration fits shiny Taros really well. And while I honestly kinda like the yellow and green shiny we've got today, I would not be upset in the slightest if its colors ended up looking like this instead. Moving on, and we're starting to get to the good part with our number 4 entry, Zapdos. The next several spots on this list are by far the most requested changed shinies I've seen on this channel. And with shiny Zapdos, it makes sense. The darn thing barely changes at all, getting a more saturated yellow color overall with darker orange on the beak and legs. Now, I've hunted this shiny in both the main series games and on Pokemon Go, and each time I found myself questioning my sanity. Was the Zapdos in front of me shiny, or was it not? Well, I think we can solve that once and for all in a really simple way. How about we keep the yellow color for the shiny we have now, but change the beak and legs to be a really vibrant red. This keeps the shiny more in line with what we saw in the days of Gold and Silver, and would make it really obvious for shiny hunters who are tearing their hair out trying not to soft reset over a shiny. But perhaps it's still not nearly obvious enough. So how about we go crazy and turn shiny Zapdos into a dark blue-gray color, like a thundercloud swollen with rain, and then the legs and beak could turn a brilliant golden color, like it's lightning shooting out of the sky. Not only is this a fairly unique color for a shiny Pokemon, but it looks particularly good on Zapdos. Truthfully, all of the legendary birds could use some changes to their shiny, but for now, they did not make the cut for this list. Instead, we're moving on to our number 3 spot, Dragonite. Like the previous entry, people really seem to hate shiny Dragonite, but this time, I don't think it really deserves all the hate it's been given. I kinda like the mellow green color that it's got, and while the bright magenta underwings aren't my favorite things in the world, they certainly don't detract from the shiny in any major way. Most folks would say there are 2 easy ways to fix this shiny. One is to give it the light blue colors of the rest of its evolution line, and change the underwings to more of a mellow pink color, which does look pretty good, but it also kind of gives it the exact same shiny we gave to Crowbat earlier. And the other option is equally obvious. Give it the same pink shiny that Dratini and Dragonair get, which I gotta say does look a lot better. But there are so many Pokemon, especially blue Pokemon, that get these pink shinies, and there's just not as many that get decent green shinies. So in the interest of diversity, wouldn't it make more sense to keep shiny Dragonite green? That said, this pink Dragonite does look pretty good, so if its shiny had to look this way, I think I'd be okay with that. Next up is another commonly requested shiny change. It's our number 2 entry, Nidoqueen. And yet again, this is a Pokemon that absolutely does not deserve the shiny hate it gets. Nidoqueen's shiny turns from blue and yellow to army green and pink underneath. This is such a unique shiny. Very few Pokemon get this combination of shiny colors, and none pull it off nearly as well as Nidoqueen. And yet, it's almost once a day that I get a comment on my channel telling me to change this shiny. And like the previous entry, this change should be pretty obvious. Instead of army green above with pink highlights, let's make shiny Nidoqueen pink overall with green highlights. Although I think its current shiny looks great, this color scheme also fits a Nidoqueen suitably well. The pink color brings it more in line with its pre-evolutions, and almost more importantly, cements its relationship with Nidoking, and therefore the other half of the Nidoran line. But I've got to reiterate, not every blue Pokemon can or should turn pink or magenta or purple or anything else in that color spectrum. In the interest of shiny diversity, I think I'll take Nidoqueen's original green shiny any day. And finally, we've arrived at the number 1 spot on today's list, and by far the most requested shiny change I've ever gotten. It's Espeon. Now, while I kind of like Espeon shiny, I also get it. Looking at the previous entries on today's list, it's clear that bright green or yellow-green shinies are especially unpopular with shiny hunters. I recently asked some folks why this might be, and they all pretty much replied with the same answer. The green shinies these Pokemon get tends to make them look sickly, and seems unbecoming of how awesome some of these Pokemon actually are. So let's take the time to fix that on Espeon. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know what my favorite color of shiny is, and that's blue. Here, Espeon could turn a nice light blue color, with deep purple for the ears and eyes, and then bright magenta for the gem on its head, which definitely looks cool, but we've got a ton of blue shinies out there. So maybe let's branch out and turn the shiny pure white instead, with silver for the ears and eyes, but with a golden gem. And I think this looks super cool. Angelic even. Now I know this is the exact description I previously gave the shiny Umbreon from earlier in this video, but I think angelic just kind of fits Espeon better. And while this would definitely be my choice for the shiny, people have noted that I tend to turn a lot of shinies white when given the chance. Which is fair, I mean, let's face it, doesn't this shiny look super cool? But what if we were to give Espeon a shiny that's a little more uncommon? So how about we turn shiny Espeon a deep purple color overall, with dark midnight eyes and magenta for the ears. This is a shiny coloration that is extremely rare in Pokemon today. I'd even say that I haven't really seen it before, although I'm sure that just stating that as fact fact, we'll cue somebody to jump down into the comments section and tell me about a dark purple shiny that I've missed. Nevertheless, this is one of the most beautiful shiny changes that I've ever made, and it really fits Espeon perfectly, adding to the mystique of this magical creature and truly exemplifying its psychic typing. If I could change any one Pokemon shiny on today's list, this is the one I'd choose. Well, that's all we've got for today, guys. There are a lot of shiny Pokemon out there, and quite a few of them have shinies that we'd all consider to be subpar. And while it's fun to speculate about what a shiny could or should look like, it's unlikely that Game Freak would ever give us some of the major shiny changes that we, the fans, would like to see. It's a long shot, but maybe, just maybe, Game Freak will finally listen. Thanks for watching, guys. Keep an eye out on this channel because I'm gonna be moving on through the generations pretty soon. My choices for the top 10 shinies of Generation 3 will show up in the near future, but until then, you can check out some of the other shiny changes videos that I've made, or you can check out how my shiny form dex is coming along. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we are gonna see you on the next shiny.